Okay, so when we look at the Bible as well, I don't plan on spending as much time speaking about this from the biblical perspective, but I will definitely probably make short references. One of the promises that are in the Bible that all those people who believe in Jesus Christ are given the right to become a son of God. Uh, and this is very, very much what people are actually striving to become. Now, this is quite difficult because what makes a son isn't always so very easily understood. But we see in the Bible that you are a son of God if you are able to forgive your enemies. If you're able to bless and to love your enemies, you are a son. We see in the Bible in the Old Testament that King Solomon was actually born a son. He was already a son as soon as he was born. So sonship is very, very precious. It's a very precious relationship with God. Your prayers are heard, your faith is heard, and God moves in your life in a very special way. Um, it's a place of favor, and every single person desires sonship, and it's basically open to every single person. However, this also really, really conflicts with the Apostle Paul because he basically wrote that salvation for women came through childbirth, which is basically stating that women will gain sonship only by having a child who enters into sonship. And indeed, if you are able to raise a child who eventually makes it to this position of basically being a son, and then it affects their whole family, and it affects their mother and their father especially. And this is one of the reasons why sonship is also so very difficult to reach, because it's not just about the one person who is manifesting sonship. It is also about the entire community that they are connected with. And this is important to remember. This is very, very important to remember. Um, so, even though I think that the Apostle Paul was contradicting that other Bible verse where the Bible completely states that sonship, that God gives everyone the right to become a son if they believe. I do believe that the Apostle Paul was seeing and observing a truth, and that is the incredibly difficult nature that, not nature, but the difficult path that women have to sonship, that it's almost impossible. And the reason why I believe that it is almost impossible is because of the devil's conspiracy against women, and how very often the devil works through authority in order to kill and to condemn women who are on their way to sonship. There are very, 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 very few cases where women have made it to sonship, and it's usually women who stay single for the rest of their life. It's usually women who are in convents, although female authority can be just as evil as male authority if it's not submitted to Jesus Christ. You see women like Corrie ten Boom, who was single her entire life, had a particularly special father, and her whole people and her whole community was basically beaten down with judgment for her to finally sneak through and to make it. So you see many, many women who are sons. Either they're on the road to becoming a son, or they are actually a son, and those women are killed, and they're usually judged. And you see this with Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was a very special woman. She saw a lot of different kinds of things. She really had a vision for the king and France, and the men in her life basically sold her out to the enemy. They accused her and accused her and accused her until they broke her, and they finally broke her through the accusation of wearing men's clothes. and they burned her at the stake. We see this in countless witch trials where women who were very godly and had an incredible relationship with God were accused as witches, and they were killed. We see this very often. To me, uh, if you see a beautiful young woman who is just extraordinarily beautiful, and she's kidnapped and she's killed and she is thrown in the woods and she's been killed. To me, this is the devil's conspiracy against women and against women who are destined to become sons or who are carriers of Jesus Christ and his kingdom. Very often you have husbands who are very deeply attracted to these kinds of women for their kindness, their grace, and their love. But they also sense a kind of special inheritance that this woman has. So they do what they can to get married to them. But as soon as they are married to these women, the women are brutalized and beaten down. They're humiliated. They're abused very, very badly until the woman either leaves them, maybe she commits a sin and she ends up with another man who steals this special favor from God, and they're basically choked out in any kind of possible way through by the devil working through men and working through the authority of man. As I said, women can be just as vicious and just as bad when they have authority and they're not submitted to Jesus Christ. But very, very often, this conspiracy is working through men in regards to their relationship with women. You have churches who do what they can to try to get women to fall into sexual sin. You just see a tremendous amount of men who are trying to attack women in various ways. Modern examples of where this is happening. I just recently looked at a documentary about Rosemary Kennedy. She was the sister to the Kennedy that we had in the White House, John F. Kennedy. There we go. She was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman. Her mom had been encouraged to try not to have her, to squeeze her legs shut rather than giving birth to this poor baby, and apparently it deprived oxygen from her brain, and that gave her the education level of a 5-year-old or a fifth grader, I think it was, if I remember right. Besides her disabilities with education, she was an incredibly special young lady. Her sister and her father eventually went to England. It was before the war, and when she was there, she was so favored of the royal family, and the British press couldn't get enough of her, and she was just really, really considered an incredibly special, beautiful young lady. She really thrived there, but because of the war, they moved back to the U.S., and apparently the ambitions and the drive of the Kennedy family was pushing her into more and more rebellious activity, and she was acting out more and more. So her father basically gave her a lobotomy and stuck her in an institution for the rest of her life. We can see in Britney Spears, we can see in the story of Britney Spears right now the incredible bid that her father and those in authority really went to in order to enslave her to the ambitions of her father. She was completely forced into slavery by her own father, and the whole legal system basically turned against her, took her children away, gave them to Kevin Federline, who was probably just using her for money as well. So we definitely see that. the different cases that we see of women who are being judged unfairly, being left by husbands, giving their life to these men just to be left behind, and so on and so forth is really, it's really tremendous, and it's very scary. We have a song right now that's out by Billie Eilish. I don't 100% approve of this particular song, but I believe it gives a real insight um, into what's really going on. And the song is titled "All the Good Girls Go to Hell." And basically, I think that song is really completely true. That if there are women who are out there who are really striving towards God and striving towards sonship, the authorities that are in power will do absolutely everything they possibly can to find some means of condemning these women to some kind of hell, whether it's a conservatorship, whether it is a lobotomy, whether it is any other number of things. So I do really believe that there is a conspiracy against women. I do believe that it works mostly through men and through the ambitions of men and through the condemnation and legal system. I think that the religious system is also very dangerous. That being said, I think that there are a lot of things that are happening with a lot of women, and usually you can see what's going on. And those special kinds of women, when they're being condemned a lot, where men are calling them whores or finding different ways of trying to condemn them, where they're considered sort of the black sheep of the family, where there's extraordinary lengths being taken to try to control their resources and to try to hold them down. You can see that by husbands who are constantly putting their wives down, and the wife is never quite good enough, and the wife is always below par, and then maybe the community around that family or that relationship gets behind the man and also accuses the woman. You just see incredible amount of cases throughout history and throughout time, and and what's very sad about this is that those women are carrying the ultimate privilege and favor. And if we look at Rosemary, she had so much favor from the royal family, which unfortunately they've had so many problems with American women. I feel bad for them, because every time an American woman comes in contact with that family, it just brings so much pain. But with Rosemary, it really seemed like she had special favor and a special position and a special place. And her father probably saw her disability and her acting out as a threat to his ambitions, and so he decided to deal with that problem. And unfortunately, we have this thing these days now called the Kennedy curse, and how much of that Kennedy curse has to do with the fact that he wiped out his own daughter Rosemary, and how much of the misfortune that's followed has to do with the ambitions of those men and the destruction of the beauty that the Kennedy women had possessed and still possess. So, I think that is probably, it has a lot to do with what's really going on with the Kennedy curse. So I really believe that is all that's going to fit in this particular case. I don't know if I'll talk any more about this. There's definitely a lot more examples that I could bring up. We'll see if I do that or not. Have a nice day.